Welcome to the Rock Interview Series with host Thomas S. ORWAT Jr.
Welcome to episode number 74 of the Rock Interview Series. I'm Thomas ORWAT Jr. It is April 27th, 2023, and for this feature, I have drummer Mark Miller as my special guest. Mark Miller started performing professionally during the early 1970s. He caught the attention of bass player Billy Sheehan, who was in a popular local band called TALAS during this time. Mark and Billy worked together briefly in two different bands during the late 70s. In 1983, Billy revamped TALAS and recruited Mark to be their drummer. Shortly after, TALAS released a live record entitled Live Speed on Ice. Mark remained with TALAS until late 1985, when Billy Sheehan left the band to join up with ex-Van Halen vocalist David Lee Roth. Then in 2017, Billy, Mark, and vocalist Phil Naro decided to reform TALAS. In 2022, TALAS released their third studio record entitled 1985. What follows is an exclusive interview with Mark Miller, in which he talks about the new TALAS record, his past history, a new track, and much, much more. So here he is, Mark Miller. Before we get started, please subscribe to the Rock Interview Series. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rock Interview Series. And we have a great special for you today. We have Mark Miller, drummer of TALAS, with us today. Mark, how you doing?
Doing good.
Awesome.
Good.
For a lot of people that might not know who Mark Miller is regarded as, by Billy Sheehan of all people, as one of like the best drummers on the face of the earth. So if you're getting that kind of recommendation from someone like Billy Sheehan, you know he's a great drummer. So thank you for coming on today to the Rock Interview Series. What I'd like to do is, of course, I want to talk about the most recent TALAS record, and then after that, I'd like to go back and talk about your music history. It's pretty interesting. You've been pretty much playing. Started playing professionally back in like the 1970s, mid 1970s. Yeah. And very interesting timeline. So we'll get started. We'll talk about the TALAS record that was released in September 23rd, 2022. Yep. TALAS 1985.
Day after my birthday. Day after my birthday.
Oh, was it really? Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great record, and
thanks.
You know, I'll let you tell most of the story here, but you know, to start you off, this was a record that originally was supposed to be released in 1985 when TALAS, with Billy Sheehan, of course, was, you know, right on the verge of signing a contract with a major record label. You guys were out on tour with Yngwie Malmsteen, in magazines, and you know, TALAS was about to explode, and then Billy Sheehan got an offer that he couldn't refuse, playing with David Lee Roth. So that was kind of the end of TALAS at that point. So well, why don't you pick it up to like how TALAS got back together all these years later?
Well, it's kind of neat. Over those years, after TALAS split up, I sold my kit, and I didn't play drums for about 15 years. And I just started a new life, built a house. I had already had 2 kids, and was married, and did all those wonderful things and enjoyed a new life. Built a house here in Rochester. Then about 2016, my daughter and I went to see the Winery Dogs, and I thought, let's stick around and say hi to Billy. I had seen Billy over the years with Niacin and with all Steve Vai and all his other bands, you know, but I hadn't gone back and said hi to him or anything. We had kept in communication over the years anyway, but this time I thought, I'm going to go back and say hi. So we hung around after the show. It was at the Trough in Buffalo, and he was real surprised to see us, and he was really surprised to see my daughter, because at the time when TALAS split up, my daughter had just been born. She was under a year old, so she never saw me play or anything like that. And that's one of the things Billy said. He says, man, your daughter, Casey, has never seen you play. We got to do something about that. And I just let it go and went back and met Mike Portnoy, who was a big fan, and that was cool. And, you know, had a really good time connecting. And shortly thereafter, I don't know if it was that sentiment or Phil had tried over the years to get TALAS back together several times, unsuccessfully. But whatever the case may be, I got a phone call that, you know, we'd like to do this, and Billy's into it. So I said, sure, let's go. And from there, we just picked up and did that 2017 show, which was really cool. And getting Kiri Najowski on board, that was huge. I mean, I don't think there could have been another player who could have fit so well. And it was just he and I got together. Of course, Kiri didn't know a lot of the material. So he and I got together at my house and we rehearsed a dozen times or so. And mainly Kiri did all his homework. He's that kind of a guy. He just does his homework, does everything really well. But when we got together at my house and we rehearsed just the two of us, it was about getting the pace of a TALAS show. The TALAS V2 show, is pretty intense at times. So I wanted to make sure he got that pace going, and which he did. And Billy flew in. We only had a couple of rehearsals, and we flew out there on stage and did it. It was a lot of fun, just a lot of fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't make that show, but I did watch, many hours of footage of that show. And you're right. I mean, it was pretty incredible, especially considering the fact that was your first show together after all these years. It
surprised all of us.
Yeah, and that got the momentum going. And a couple years later, then you went out on a 2-week tour. You played New York City, played 3 nights in New York City. Yeah. Were there ever any plans to continue or have a longer tour after that?
A lot of it had to do with Billy's schedule and Phil's. Phil's quite active as well. Lots of groups going on. So Kiri's active in the local scene. I'm not really that active other than TALAS, and I do a lot of work online, but nothing that would hold me back. So it was pretty much dictated by those two guys. And there was always desire, and there still is. It's not that we're calling it quits at all. We have got this hot album, which we're all really proud of, and it just turned out really well. Again, like the 2017 show, better than we could have expected. So
the 1985 record, which ended up being Phil Naro's last record, sadly, before he passed away, pretty similar to the record that you guys were going to release in 1985. I mean, hence the name. And right before Billy had left the band. In what ways was this record that you released now different from the record that would have came out in 1985? Was it pretty much the same track listing, or were there like newer tracks added to this?
No, it was pretty much the same, other than the 2 songs. Black and Blue was a new song that Phil brought into the foray here, and which is a really cool song that we all loved. And then Billy did a bass solo. We recorded like 18 songs. We only used 11, I think, on the record. So there's a bunch of material that's sitting here yet that we haven't released. And there's also, getting back to the 2017 show, there's a video out there that I hope comes to the forefront someday. Sebastian Marino, passed away recently, and he produced that show. He was like the 5th Beatle for us, the 5th TALAS member, and he produced that show, the 2017 show. All the equipment, everything was there, came from him. He had 4 cameras on stage. He had roaming photographers. He took video off of Facebook and YouTube, and he made a video start to finish, from prior to walking on stage to walking off stage, complete documented of this show, and it's phenomenal. It's all been remixed and it sounds fantastic, and hopefully it'll see the light of day someday.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there were some extra tracks that you recorded for the record that didn't appear. Right. What's the status of those? Do you think those might be released eventually, or maybe just thrown out there for downloads or anything like that?
Well, one thing, I don't know how many people know, the Japanese release has an extra track on it that you don't have in the US. That's Misunderstood. It was a cover that we did over the years, So that was released in Japan only. But then there's several other songs that we did over the years that we just recorded just for the hell of it. And they're out there, and hopefully we'll get to release them on something somewhere. We recently did a version of Farandole, which was pretty cool. We put that out on YouTube, and then there's a track coming up. You may have seen, there's a promo released just today about a song called Love for Sale.
Peter Criss song, right?
Done with Peter Criss, yeah. So looking forward to that. That's really the promo doesn't do it justice. it's a good solid rock song and all, but there's some cool Sheehanisms in there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I've already heard the song like many times. The individual responsible for putting that project together, John Jeffrey from the
Yeah.
group Kiss This. Yeah, it has a compilation called Buffalo Rock City, and this is going to be the second Buffalo Rock City release that's coming out, I believe, in September. And he released this track, and you're on it. Billy Sheehan's on it. Jeff Scott Soto is also on it, singing lead vocals, and it's a killer track of the Peter Criss song that Phil was involved in writing that particular song. Yeah, so I believe that's going to be available for download on May 3rd, which ironically, well, I'm sure he did it intentionally, John. It's would be the 2-year anniversary of Phil's passing.
Yeah, you can see how that song has been completed for well over a year.
Wow.
We did that as soon as Phil passed. John called me about it, said he had this thing in the works and he was interested in if we would do it. So I got a hold of everyone and we put it together. And when we got a hold of Jeff Scott Soto, he was like all in. Anything I can do for Phil, you know, you guys want to do some live shows, whatever you want to do, I'm in. So we all just jumped right on the song and completed it really fast. And so it's been sitting there for almost 2 years. But
Wow.
I'm glad it's finally going to come out.
Yeah, there's been talk about possibly another TALAS show with you guys bringing in a different lead singer. Is that just rumor right now, or is that something that you guys have considered, or is there anything in the works right now?
We have seriously considered it, and we've been in discussions with some people and stuff like that. But then the Winery Dogs came to fruition. That album came out. Mr. Big was something that I think Billy probably knew about, but it kind of came from left field. Like they decided to do that and got Nick DiVirgilio to play drums on that. Yeah. So that's going to be a dynamite tour. So he's really booked up here.
Yeah, Billy does have a lot going on, that's for sure. I mean, everything he touches pretty much turns to gold, in my opinion. Winery Dogs are amazing. Mr. Big's amazing. Niacin, even though I'm not a big jazz fan, I love that. And of course, but my heart's in TALAS. I mean, that's the band that, I would love to see Billy like kind of like bookend his career, like ending, going out, doing like 5 years with TALAS, or 10 or whatever. That would be awesome. That's how I would love to see it. Nothing against the Winery Dogs or Mr. Big, but I mean, like I said, I grew up on TALAS.
As I told you earlier, I watched Billy all through the years, all the different bands he was in. I never saw the David Lee Roth band, but all the other bands I went to see and caught shows and stuff like that. But boy, when the Winery Dogs came out, I think it was 2013, I immediately wrote him and I said, "You're here, you're back. This is it." I thought it was the closest thing to TALAS I've heard in forever,
Yeah, they're incredible.
Great band.
They're like up, I consider, as far as the power trio goes, I mean, they're up there with Cream. I mean, those guys can just they can jam. I mean, they're 3 brilliant musicians, with no limits at all on what they can play.
Yep. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. That's the beauty of a 3-piece. And then an extension of that, the beauty of playing with Billy, just like I said, jamming and improvisation. The songs are structured. They may sound the same to the layman, but when you're up on stage playing them, there's new stuff happening all the time. It's the wonder of what we do not know.
Yeah. Well, on that note, what I like to do now is I like to go back and talk about the beginning of your career. And of course, Billy Sheehan's going to be a theme that comes up quite a bit in here. So we're going to start off by talking about 1974. You're in Rochester, New York. That's where you're born, Rochester, New York, correct? Yeah. Okay. Yep. So there's a band called Black Sheep in 1974 that features a soon-to-be huge rock star named Lou Gramm, who's out of Rochester, and Donnie Mancuso, a guitar player who went on to, really become a legend in the Western New York area. So you auditioned for the group Black Sheep in 74. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. What was the audition like?
Well, I'm going to step back a little further.
Okay.
Back in high school, I went to school with Bruce Turgon, bass player for Black Sheep.
Oh, okay.
We were in and out of bands, playing high school dances, doing all kinds of stuff. So that's how I got to know him. And that was my connection that got me the audition. So basically starting out, I was just like Billy, a fan of the Beatles, started learning by playing guitar. Then I took up drums. My older brother played in a band, all that stuff. And The Who, Led Zeppelin, Stones, Deep Purple, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, a friend of mine turned me on to a band called the Mahavishnu Orchestra. You ever hear of the Mahavishnu Orchestra?
Yes, I have. I'm not going to say I'm an expert, but I've definitely heard of them. Yes.
Yeah. Well, here I was coming in this direction, and I just did a 180 and went the other direction musically. And that's kind of the direction I was going in at that point, and in 74. So like everything that happened to me musically, I never really pursued a musical career. It just I was just enjoyed playing music. So things would just happen and I'd try. And Bruce called me out of the blue. We had been out of school for a while, and he called me out of the blue and asked if I'd do an audition. And I said, sure. So we went to a farmhouse. I think he lived out in Leroy on a Wacka Trail, and we set up in a barn and we started playing some songs. And like everything I did at that point, I jammed. We got together. We wanted to feel each other out musically. So you jam. We started some songs, and if you're familiar with Black Sheep, pretty laid back band, very much like Free and
like
really laid back
rock, yeah.
So we got started with that, and I'm chugging along, and it's okay, but I just thought, let's mix it up a bit. And I think at that point I double timed something, and we took off and we jammed a bit and got funky and whatnot, and it wasn't their vibe. So I think they were turned off by that. So that's most likely why I didn't get the audition. But what I truly remember out of everything was Lou Gramm basically sitting on a log. I don't even think he had a microphone. And this guy, he was belting out these songs, and it was just, you couldn't take your eyes off of it and your ears away, because it was just phenomenal. He had that voice and that power back then that was just, well, it carried on, like everyone knows. He's well deserving of his success for sure.
It's really unfortunate that Black Sheep didn't become like what Foreigner became, because I mean, they had all the ingredients there. They had a label that was in the beginning very supportive of them. They got some pretty good tours. They were opening for Kiss. And so I mean, they had their opportunities.
Yeah, and I think Bruce did much of the writing for the band, and he was just a phenomenal player. Just had big ears. He just I don't know, his melodic sense was really good. So that's surprising. But at that time in 74, I think Ron Rocco started with that band, and at that point Ron had left, and so that's where I got a call into that. And the next drummer up was Mike Bonafide, who was just a superb drummer. They really were successful there in getting him. I always loved his style. So.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, you ended up joining up with Don Mancuso again.
That was my Don Mancuso connection, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how I got connected with him again. Again, another phone call, and I'm just playing in random jazz bands, fusion bands, and just making music, and get a phone call, hey, you want to do something? And he and Pat Patrone, and they had a bass player, Slack, can't remember his first name, Greg Slack, I think. But anyway, we got together, jammed, and cool band. I loved Donnie's style of playing is really, he's just got a melodic sense as well.
Yeah. And
he and Pat Patrone clicked really well together. Unfortunately, we were only playing out, we were rehearsing 5 nights a week and playing out twice a month. And unfortunately, our choice of material, Gentle Giant, King Crimson, we had several originals. Our show was not all we had were musicians in the audience.
Yeah.
So you don't make money doing that. And club owners don't see a value in that either. But we were just following our muse. And that's what I've always done pretty much.
That band was called Aurora?
Aurora, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Donnie and Pat had this connection. You remember Duke Jupiter back in the
Of
day?
course, yeah, Duke Jupiter, right? Yep.
They had two guitar players and they were playing unison all the time, and had these beautiful melodies happening. Well, Donnie and Pat, rather than play in unison, they'd play opposing each other and alternate notes and things like that. It was
Wow.
very interesting. Some of the original material was really cool. A lot of fun to play.
Yeah, so that was 75, 76. So I'm trying to think what music was like. That was a little before I started getting into music, but I'm imagining, Led Zeppelin was really big back then. Aerosmith was kind of getting started. So you're looking at like conventional type of, blues-based English rock probably was popular at that time, with some probably progressive rock too, with like, Yes and Genesis
Yep,
and that.
exactly. And a band like Aurora could still go into a club. I mean, we played the Penny Arcade several times, and places like that. We'd have a full sound system and the whole smash. So it was pretty cool to be able to do that. I don't think you'd be able to do that so much today, but again, there wasn't a market for it. So
Yeah.
but right around that same time, 74, 75, 76, I got my first introduction to TALAS. The bass player from Aurora, he said, man, you got to hear these guys. He had already been to see them. So we went out to a club in Batavia and caught them. And I was just blown away. Obviously, three-piece band was phenomenal. Have you ever seen the three-piece band?
Oh yeah, I did. I with Billy Sheehan, Dave Constantino, and Paul Varga. Yeah, the very first time I saw them was in 1979 at Shays when they opened up for UFO.
Okay.
And then I saw them when they played their headlining show at Kleinham's Music Hall
That's cool.
in 1980.
It was kind of a different TALAS than the TALAS in the early 70s. The TALAS in the early 70s, they just had vocals to die for, and they were playing King Crimson and they were playing progressive music in conjunction with the hits of the day. And if a song came out on Monday, they were playing it by Friday in the clubs, and they just had it all together. And then we walk into this club and it's packed, of course, Smoky Club, and they've got these vocals and the sound, and then they've got this guy playing bass, that was just like unlike anything else. And so it was pretty phenomenal. So I saw them several times after that in the early 70s. And I didn't really see any of the later versions of TALAS.
Mm-hmm. You were asked to join a super group in 1977. Give us more details on the super group, please.
Yeah, I mean, this was part of the Aurora thing. And I was still playing in Aurora, I was also playing in a fusion band. We were working a little bit out in Geneseo way. It was a jazz band. And but anyway, I get a phone call at work. I was a printer as well as a musician, just enjoying making music, and had a job and everything. And I get a call at work, and somebody on the phone, they asked me into the office, and the guy says, we'd like you to be a part of the next super group in the East Coast. And I said, thought to myself, are you joking? Who is this? They wouldn't tell me anything. It's just, if you're interested, be here at Thursday, 1:00. And so I hung up the phone and thought, well, what have I got to lose, right? And they told me where to be in Buffalo, downtown Main Street, Starstruck Productions. So I looked that up, and that's legit. So I figured, okay, maybe it's something, And so I drove out there, found the place, 1:00, walk in the door, and there's Billy and Fred Caserta and Mike Faley all sitting there. And from that moment on, I really don't remember much, other than I left, quit my job, quit my band, quit everything, moved to Buffalo, literally immediately. Wow. So it was pretty cool, pretty wild.
And what happened with the super group?
Oh, well, I moved in with Billy for a while, and I don't know, maybe a month or so, we had Bruce Piccato. You remember Bruce from a band called Rodan?
Rodan, yep.
Gamelan,
yeah. Very popular bands in the Buffalo area, yes.
Rodan had broken up, so and Billy and Bruce went to school together, I believe. But Billy said, hey, I got this guy, and we're going to see if we can put this group together. And we went in his basement, and we set up, and we were thrashing away for weeks. playing Police tunes and Rush and all kinds of crazy stuff,
Wow.
trying to find something to connect with, all the while auditioning singers. If I recall, we even had Craig Corka auditioned for one. He was one of the singers who auditioned, but it just never gelled. It just wasn't what Billy was thinking, and I was naive. I was kind of rolling with it, thinking, that it was going to happen, and I was just going to do whatever it took to make it happen. So that's what I was trying to do. And after about a month or so, we just packed it in and decided, it wasn't going to work. So here I quit everything, left everything I had in Rochester, but I had met some cool people while I was there. The guys from Rodan, Bill Ludwig and Bruce Piccato. And there were some offers also to play in some other bands. But with my history of not following the money, I chose to play a more progressive thing and started a band with Bruce and Bill Ludwig called Backhand. And we were doing a fusion jazz, kind of heavy rock, all those things above. And we had Tim Rinkelman who was running sound for us, and all leftover remnants of Rodan at the time. And so we did that for a while, and of course didn't make any money. But I chose to stay in Buffalo. It's quite a market at the time. The music scene was fantastic, and a lot of people to play with. So I enjoyed it.
That's when I first started getting interested in music, around 1977, 1978. And I was wrong when you asked me about if I've seen TALAS before. My very first time actually seeing TALAS was in 1978 when a 4-piece TALAS opened for Triumph at Kleinhans. And at the same time, I remember reading in a local magazine or local paper something about a Billy Sheehan group coming out, and seeing a big picture of Billy Sheehan with his bass. And of course, after doing some research into that, I found out you were involved in that also. The Billy Sheehan group it was called, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I don't really know.
Or Billy Sheehan band. There was a Billy Sheehan project, something like that. Yeah.
Billy just used to come in and out of my life, and the phone would ring, and it would be him. And it's like, hey, you want to do something? And there were
that's because he respected you so much as a drummer. I mean, even back in the 70s, he did, and and then even interviews I had with Billy, like in the like you could look at all my interviews with Billy Sheehan, and he always mentioned something about how great Mark Miller was as a drummer, and like every single interview I've done. So I mean, he has a lot of respect for you as a musician.
I do him. I mean, there's an energy there. I've always thought that the two of us just have a similar energy, that when we're on stage we share it, but in our lives we live it. We just kind of have a similar energy. I mean, I'm creative, he's ultra creative. It's just an energy, and I respect him as well. He's a great guy. But that was the Billy Sheehan band was another one of those phone calls. Just, hey, you want to do this? I'm looking, okay. And I was playing in some fusion band at the time. I think it was Bill Ludwig and Chris Vorse. We were doing a real obscure Mahavishnu, Return to Forever, Jaco Pastorius, all kinds of crazy music. And again, not working, but enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
But in the middle of that, Billy calls. And so just be down to the Caboose in Fredonia Friday night. And we had no rehearsal, nothing. And I had never met Phil. Phil was the singer, and Dave Munkoff was the guitar player. Never met either of them. I had seen Dave in Whale, playing in Rochester area clubs. He was in a band called Whale, but never met any of them. Somehow we put together a set list, and we went up and played a couple of sets, and we came back Saturday night and did the same thing, and that was it.
How did Billy discover Phil?
I think at that moment.
Really?
Billy Sheehan band, yeah. That was one of those things. I can't really be sure if he knew him beforehand.
Yeah.
Phil had success in Canada with, I think, Chain Reaction at the time.
Yeah, Chain Reaction. Phil Naro was in Chain Reaction, right? Yeah.
So there was a lot out there. And the same way that Billy found me was through, or whoever found me to go to Buffalo, was Aurora had done a simulcast with CMF WCMF in Rochester. And we went into their studios and recorded a half-an-hour show there that was broadcast live. And then we also did a TV show on Channel 8 called Saturday Night. All local bands were doing it, and they were highlighting local bands once a week. Channel 8 was in Rochester. So at some point, somehow Billy got a cassette of Aurora. And the song he always brings up is Stratus by Billy Cobham, which we played.
Yeah,
and
he's a big fan of Billy. Yeah, Billy's a big fan of Billy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how that came about. When you record stuff, you never know where it's going to end up or who's going to hear it. And it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Now, are there any tracks of the Billy Sheehan band that are available that you have or Billy has, or will I ever hear these tracks? Because I really would love to hear what it sounded like.
Me too.
But you did record some tracks, right? Did you have any originals?
Well, sometime before that, Billy called me again, another one of those out of the blue things. And he says, "Hey, can you do some recording?" I said, "Sure." So we drove down to Fredonia recording studios, and we recorded a bunch of songs. I just remember me and Billy, and there were other players there. But the one track I remember was Stop in the Name of Love. Okay. And shortly thereafter, TALAS did Stop in the Name of Love, and they recorded it on one of their records, right?
One of their very first studio record, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what we did was the precursor to that. And it was, looking in hindsight, Billy was experimenting. And he just grabbed me in to do some experimenting with him. So we did. So those recordings exist somewhere, but I have no idea. I don't have them.
Wow. So how long was the Billy Sheehan band together? It wasn't that long, because then TALAS got back together with Billy in, I think, 1980. So it was maybe even 79, if I remember correctly. So,
well, getting back to the timeline when I first went to Buffalo, shortly after I moved out of Billy's place and started with Backhand, he started Light Years. Because when I was living with him, we were hashing around with names. We talked about a name, Punk Jazz, and then he threw out Light Years, and I said, that's pretty cool. We never hung our hats on it because we never really had a band. But then he took that Light Years name and put it on whatever band that was before he got into it. Was there a name to that band? I don't recall.
Wait, for a Billy Sheehan band?
No. Light Years, before Billy got into it.
Billy was in Light Years.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know that. I thought he went right from Billy Sheehan band to back to TALAS. I didn't know there was something in between there.
Well, Light Years was in there for a good year or so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I've
Tom Doran, Jeff Craig, Ron Rocco, and
doing covers.
Light Years?
I don't remember Light Years. No.
Yeah, they were doing covers. So then after that, I'm getting way off the course here. But
no, you're teaching me. You're teaching. You're really. I thought I knew everything there was about Billy Sheehan. I didn't realize.
Look up Light Years. Great band. Great band. Yeah. The first time, and I think the only time. Well, I shouldn't say that, but the first time Billy had done a club band like that in those years with a keyboard player.
Oh wow.
So Doran was a full-fledged keyboard player. They had a huge setup on stage. So that was a little different scenario for Billy, because Billy plays, his sound is everything, so a keyboard was quite an addition for a band like that. But the connection that I have with Light Years, besides the initial connection, is that after Light Years broke up, Ron Rocco joined that band, or stayed in that band. They played, and Ron left, and then they called me to play in Terra Nova. You remember Terra Nova?
No, I don't. I was in junior high at the time. Okay. I mean, I didn't get out the bars, but I had a TALAS record, and I saw, I went to concerts when my parents would allow me.
This was all between 78 and 82, somewhere in there, so it was a quick 4 years of stuff that was happening. But Terra Nova was a pretty popular band. We played all the circuit up the East Coast kind of thing, New York State, throughway circuit kind of thing.
Any label interest at all?
That was what we tried. There was a lot of original songs. Tom was a prolific writer, the keyboard player, and Jeff Craig had a voice of an angel. And so we went in the studio, we did a bunch of recordings, nothing ever happened, and that band split up too. So
Yeah.
just the way it happens, you know.
It's
And I think,
interesting in retrospect. It seemed like there was such a great music scene in Buffalo and Rochester at that time, and you know, a lot of original bands. I mean, just tons of them, like the Alan Sims Group, Cock Robin, Duke Jupiter, like you mentioned, Cheater. All these great bands doing original music, and nobody got signed. TALAS really didn't get signed either. It was like, what is wrong with Western New York? I mean, these bands are a lot better than some of the other bands like that are getting signed nationwide. It
crazy,
just
isn't it?
didn't make any sense. And that's, to me, as like, you know, a 14-year-old. It's like, why aren't these bands getting signed? I mean, why is it so? Why aren't they coming out with records I can buy at Cabbages or Record
Yeah,
Theater?
right.
You know?
Yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad. I mean, you had some good talent come out. I mean, Spyro Gyra did really well. Remember
Yeah.
that band?
Yeah, they were signed to a local label. They were signed to Amherst Records, which was Lenny Silver's record, from the owner of Record Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so at this point, so TALAS, the 3-piece band, is kind of making some waves, and then something happened where Dave Constantino left the band, Paul Varga then left the band, and Billy recruited a new TALAS. And this was a 4-piece TALAS that he recruited, and it was a TALAS that was going to be a little heavier than the other TALAS, kind of because at that time, 1982, 1983, I mean, bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest were, you know, were very popular then. So, you know, Billy wanted to get a heavier sound, and that's how you and Phil became again involved with Billy. And so tell us how that happened. So now you got another call from Billy.
Another call from Billy. Yeah, I'm living my life. I'm married. I have a son. I'm enjoying life. I'm playing in a fusion band and following my muse, and not making any money playing music, but enjoying music nonetheless, and the musical friends I had. And out of the blue, I get a phone call again. He asked me if I want to join TALAS. And so I didn't give him an answer. I said, I got to think about this. You know, I'm committed now. I have a life. I have people depending on me, you know. And so he says, oh, well, you take your time. And so I went home, talked to my wife about it. And she goes, you have to do it. You just have to. And I said, well, it's a total commitment. You know, I'd have to leave my job. I got to join this. And so I went back to Billy, told him, you know, I'm in, but I just feel guilty that I've got this commitment. I can't really, you know, act the way I did in the past, where if I didn't eat, who cares, you know? But I have people that need to eat. So he was generous, really generous, and paid me a salary for all my time while I was in the band. So that was huge. That was the deal breaker for me. Absolutely, I'll do it, you know? So that's how we got going. And I think we rehearsed a couple of weeks at some rehearsal hall in South Buffalo. Got Phil brought in. We flew in Mitch Perry, which was really cool. Just a phenomenal player in Mitch, you know. And we just went out and did it.
Yeah, Mitch Perry was from Florida at the time, right?
California.
Or he was California. Okay.
He grew up in Florida. His father and parents were in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he did. Okay. Because I know he used to play out in Florida, like in the beginning of his career. Then he must have moved to LA. Then you recruited him. Were there any other guitarists that were considered at that point? Or was Mitch like the first guy on the list?
He was the first guy on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of I can't remember the connection Bill had out in LA.
Probably Mike Varney, right?
There you go. Mike Varney.
Yeah.
Because of that connection. And Bill told me, you know, he highly recommends this guy. He had been playing with Steeler. He brought in some great songs to the band. A song called On the Take, Crystal Clear, was one of his beginning tracks that he came and brought to us. So it was wonderful. And just a phenomenal player. Doing the live album, I just remember doing some takes, watching him play solos, and he'd play a solo.
That record right there, right? Look, it's signed by Billy Sheehan and Mark Miller recently.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great record. I remember like playing the hell out of this when it came out in
Cool.
1984, early 1984.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, that's how I think I'm in one of these pictures too, like in the crowd.
Oh, cool.
I
Yeah.
think one of these pictures was from the Uncle Sam show that you played. I think it was your
Yep.
first show that you played in Buffalo, but this was
Yep.
recorded in New York City, which I kind of found a little odd that it wasn't recorded in Buffalo. Is there any consideration to record it in Buffalo, or?
The only thing I think was Atlantic Records. We used their mobile studio. So
Oh,
basically, it was a semi that pulled right up to the club. L'Amour's had done this before. They'd had this situation to do this in at the time. You know, it wasn't like today where you've got all this digital stuff. I mean, I remember huge cords coming in across the floor. I had 2 sets of microphones, one for the show and one for the recording on my drums. So we were mic'd up to beat the band. And just before the show or maybe after it, I walk out and you walk into this semi, which is essentially outfitted like a studio. It's got couches and everything and all the mixing board, and it's all there. Engineers were in there mixing the whole show. So it was a different scenario than you have today. And it's my understanding that recording truck that was used was created by the Rolling Stones for recording Altamont.
oh, wow. Wow,
So
that's crazy.
something that Atlantic did for them, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Hopefully, I'm not wrong in all these details.
I'm sure you're 100% right. And the next question, no offense to you as a seasoned musician, but as a seasoned musician, recording a record live like that, as opposed to recording in the studio where you could do retakes and that. I mean, were you nervous at all recording that live like that? That's crazy.
Yeah, because essentially, I mean, at that moment, bizarre. We were in the dressing room of L'Amour's signing contracts this thick, signing our lives away to,
Wow.
Release a record at the time. And just, you don't have time to read any of this stuff. So you've got the show on your mind, plus you've got you're signing your life away, and you've got a mega truck out in the parking lot, and thousands of dollars being spent, and people that are feeding off of the TALAS, money machine. But none of that came into play, really, other than the nervousness of playing the show. We did 2 shows that night, and we only, I think, Sink Your Teeth was the only song that we took from the second performance. Everything else was a performance. Or maybe it's vice versa.
Wow, that's incredible. How many shows did TALAS play before that record came out?
Not many. Not many.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard it was just like maybe one, or like maybe like this might have been the 6th show, perhaps, or I don't know. I've heard different things over the years.
After we got together and we practiced for a couple of weeks, we went right up to Canada. We played Gasworks and a bunch of places up there. And it's kind of funny because recently a friend sent me what he thinks, and it could very well be, is the very first show TALAS played.
Oh, wow.
In the Gasworks, I believe, in Toronto. And I only can say that I believe it's true is because endings were off, intros were sketchy. Some of the songs, we were doing songs by Vandenberg and just bizarre stuff. Just cover songs, So that was really early on. So not a very good recording, but it's kind of neat to see. I didn't remember half the stuff we did.
Yeah. Of course, the question at this point is what led to the decision of releasing a live record before an actual, proper studio record at that point? A really unorthodox type of way of marketing the band.
Yeah, I kind of dug it, and still
it was cool. Yeah,
it was kind of cool way to do it. We were 100 miles an hour. The band was 100 miles an hour. We were on fire. Everything was just going, and why stop and settle in a studio situation, work stuff? But we just figured a live show was just, it fit the trajectory we were headed in.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree with that. Plus, live records back then were pretty popular. I remember as a fan always really looking forward to like live records being released. I mean, at that time, some of my favorite records were live. The like Aerosmith Live Bootleg, Ted Nugent Double Live Gonzo, Kiss Alive 1 and Kiss Alive 2. Frampton Comes Alive. I mean, they're all like live records. Yeah, so
my favorite Live at Leeds, The Who.
Of course, yes, yeah.
Phenomenal record. Yeah.
Yeah. So that record comes out, and Talas is like, I remember reading about Billy in magazines, and it was Billy, Billy, Billy. Were any of the members of the band ever kind of like jealous a little bit that, the spotlight was always seemed to be on Billy?
No, not I can only speak for myself, obviously, but it was just a joy to work with Billy, and Billy's unique. I mean, did Mitch Mitchell or the bass player, I can't remember his name, Redding, were they offended because of Jimi Hendrix? That's how I felt I was working with Jimi Hendrix there,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's do this. Let's enjoy this, I mean, that tour, the last tour with Yngwie was magical. Just to see those two guys. I mean, Yngwie in his prime, Billy in his prime, and they would get up on stage and play together at the end of each performance, Anybody who saw those shows, they got something that you don't see every day for sure.
Yeah, you're skipping a little bit ahead here, but that's okay. We'll take it.
Right.
That's all right. I'm still very upset that show never played in Buffalo. I mean, would have died to see that show, and how dare you guys not play like at Shays? I mean, or someplace like that. That would have been probably could have even played in a bigger place than Shays at that time, because Talas was just on fire and very popular. But before that, I want to talk about the change in guitar players from Mitch Perry to Johnny Angel, and that was very interesting too, because Johnny Angel was a local in a local band, a local born musician in the Western New York area, and had a band called Zillion, and Zillion actually opened up for one of the first Talas shows at Uncle Sam's that I saw, and I thought Zillion was great, especially Johnny. And then a couple months later he's in Talas. What led to that decision? Because at that point, I mean, Talas was in major magazines. Billy Sheehan was already, known as a legendary musician. You guys could have probably picked anybody you could have picked any big name musician you wanted, and you went for a local guy. And nothing against Johnny. I mean, Johnny was great and played a great role in the band. And I think ultimately that was the right decision to make. But I mean, was he your first choice? I mean, was there anybody else that you wanted to bring in at the time or considered bringing in at the time?
That's a hard question to answer. We didn't really think too much about it because it was such a fast decision. We made the decision very fast. There were some issues that were unreconcilable with Mitch, and so we had to let him go. And I don't remember. It all happened so fast that we had worked with Zillion many times. They had opened up for us many times, and Johnny seemed like a real good fit, which he was. He just jumped right in there, did a nice job. But I don't remember there was too much discussion. We were just on a trajectory and just kept going. Johnny was a friend of Phil's, so there was a connection there. And of course, all the times they had opened up for us, and the stage presence that Johnny had, he brought a lot to the table.
Yeah, I looked like a real. I mean, he fit right in. He looked like a rock star. I mean, he was perfect. And I saw that first show that you guys played with Johnny again at Uncle Sam's, and I was shocked at I mean, like I said, I saw him with Zillion, but I went in there kind of being a little skeptical as to wow, it's like he's kind of young, and he's I don't know if he seems maybe a little green. I mean, this is like a major band that's about to take on the world, and I was blown away. I mean, he fit right in. I mean, and it was great. Yeah. And I became a huge fan of his after that first show.
Cool. Yeah. It was a lot of fun to play with Johnny. And things move fast in rock and roll, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, especially then. I mean, you guys were a band that was, definitely I mean, the darlings of Buffalo. I mean, you were kind of if anybody watching this wasn't, around there, kind of imagine the Goo Goo Dolls, right around when Name was about to break. I mean, it was kind of Talas was like that, just like that one big break away from just being this nationally huge band playing playing hockey arenas and that. I mean, I felt that you guys were close, and really disappointed that didn't happen. And
we felt we were close too.
You opened for Iron Maiden
Yeah.
the last second thing because Twist's sister canceled. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about that day and like, all the chaos about like, all of a sudden you must have got a phone call saying you're going to
Oh
be
yeah.
playing the
It
Odd.
was exciting. We had been out for 2 weeks. We were on a tour like we would do. We would go out west and work our way back home, kind of thing. And I remember getting home, and it was a Saturday, I believe, when we were home, and we had gotten in early in the morning, 5 or 6 after driving all night, kind of thing. I forgot where our last show was, but we got in. I was in bed. All of a sudden, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my wife wakes me up. You got to be down at the War Memorial, 1 o'clock for a sound check. Wow, what's going on? You're opening for Iron Maiden tonight. Okay, so that's it. It just, again, over the rush, and it's just 100 miles an hour. I don't remember too much about it the day, but I know we had a little bit of a sound check. But what I do remember is hitting the stage, and there's probably 14,000 people there, and just rock concerts, if you recall, back in the day were wild. I mean,
Yes.
stuff flying through the air and just, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I think most of the people there knew what was happening and knew that TALAS was there, and they knew the situation with DSO. I think it wasn't a surprise that TALAS showed up, because we got just a roar, and that roar was so deafening I couldn't hear myself. I hit my snare drum, just sat on the drums, hit my snare, I could not hear it, nothing. So I hit it again, nothing, couldn't hear anything. It was just the roar of the crowd. And I had never been in that situation before. Billy probably did with Van Halen tour that he was on, but I had never been in that situation before. So we literally played without hearing ourselves.
Wow.
It was sight. We just looked at each other, and we made sure the cues were happening, and just played the whole thing without hearing much at all. And it's pretty wild. 25, 30 years goes by, and one of my students, a friend who I had taught years prior, sent me a recording, and it was a recording that was taken of us playing that show.
Wow.
And it's just, all you can hear is the audience, but you just, and you hear the TALAS, playing. You can kind of make out some songs, and you listen to this whole thing, and you can't really make much out. But then at the end, we finish, and the audience goes crazy, and you hear the kid turn to his friend. That was fucking awesome. So I take it we did okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I was there. You did great. It was like, okay, this is what I expect. Yes, I'm like, this is
you're the first person I've talked to.
Yeah, no, this is what I expect of TALAS. I expect TALAS to be playing in hockey arenas. And it wasn't disappointing at all. It was a winter. It was a cold winter day, and it was incredible. And you're right about the crowd. And it was like, it was the hometown heroes. It was like, it was like, to me, I mean, because I was such a big fan. It was like almost like, the Buffalo Sabres winning a Stanley Cup, or the Bills winning the Super Bowl. It was that type of victory.
Oh, yeah.
I was like proud of you guys. And I just like I knew it. I knew their arena rock band. And I just expected that from there on in. That was it. I was like never going to see TALAS again at the Salty Dog. I was never going to see TALAS again at Uncle Sam's, because from now on, when I would have to see TALAS, it would have to be in a hockey arena.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
It was a really exciting day. Really exciting.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, I mean, you guys, well, first of all, let me back up a bit. What was it like coming down from it? I mean, how do you come down from a show like that? I mean, it must have been just like so much adrenaline pumping through your body when you got backstage. It's like, what's it like to experience that afterwards?
It was just like meeting Billy for the first time. There's so much going on that I don't remember much. It's sad that maybe it's my age, I don't know, but I don't remember much about the day, other than, as I said, that moment entering the stage just imprinted on my brain. I just never witnessed anything like that before, that many people. But the closest thing we got was playing in front of about 14,000 people on the Malmsteen tour.
Yeah.
At Milwaukee Summerfest. That was huge as well. That was a simulcast, and there was a ton of people there, and just they were really into it, and we were into it and having a ball. I've got recordings.
Yeah, that again, we'll get into that tour. But one last question about this Iron Maiden show: Did you did you have any interactions with any of the members of Iron Maiden afterwards? Did they?
I did not. No, I did not. I mean, for me, I remember again, a family man. I just kind of took off and went back home, and it was another day. And I think the next day or the next day after, we were back on the road doing our thing.
Yeah.
So it's just yeah.
Well, it seems like, and knowing you guys sort of, I mean, I occasionally would have, went up to you guys and like, as a fanboy, oh, Mark, you're awesome. Can you sign my CD type of thing? But it seemed like you guys were pretty grounded. I mean, it didn't seem like, you guys were those typical rock stars, those snotty attitudes and things like that.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, there was no drugs, nothing like that. I mean, we just, it was a business, and we enjoyed each other's company. We were in close conditions. We had a van that we traveled in. It was like a 12-seater van, road crew. And if they weren't in their truck, they were with us. And Billy and I roomed together in hotels for all the duration of TALAS. And so it was a close-knit kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we just enjoyed each other's company, and just looking forward to getting on stage every night,
Yeah. So at that point, are you like going into the recording studio and recording songs for a future record or anything like that at that point?
Yeah. We did several times. If we kind of worked it into our schedule. If we were in New York City, we would go over to Atlantic Studios. We'd stay over, we'd play a show at L'Amour's or something, and we'd stay over the next day. We'd work all night at Atlantic Studios recording songs. We had different producers who were interested in the band. We were given songs from different artists. Probably go out on a limb here and say Gene Simmons was trying to get us to play some of his songs. And I think one of the producers was from the Good Rats. And I'm stretching out here. My memory's gone, but yeah, we would go in the studio frequently to play different types of songs and experiment with different sounds and different things, but it was all towards getting that record going with the material that finally ended up on 1985.
Right. How close was this record to coming out in 1985? I know that you were signed at the time by Gold Mountain Records, right? Yeah. Yeah, so you actually had a record contract. So did you actually have any like demos? You must have had demos at that point for them to sign you, right?
We had demos, but they were not working. Yeah, we did, but we did working demos. We didn't have anything studio-wise working demos, I would say. They were just rehearsal demos.
I got you. Okay. So now we can talk about the Yngwie Malmsteen tour of 1985. Woo-hoo! So yes, so like you alluded to before, so Yngwie Malmsteen, who at the time in 1985 was probably like the biggest guitarist and most popular guitarist. I mean, brand new style. I would say that at that time, I thought he was even more popular than Eddie Van Halen. I mean, every kid who was playing guitar stopped tapping and started playing like these neoclassical licks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the D harmonic minor scales and things such as that, and emulating Yngwie Malmsteen. So you guys hooked up.
Blackmore was in there for years prior, Richie Blackmore.
Yeah, Blackmore was.
Yep. Yeah, he was playing the same kind of scales and things like that.
Yeah, Yngwie just like took it and made it like, I don't know what he made it cooler. Maybe I don't know if that's possible, but it just seemed like every kid like my age was just like fixated on Yngwie Malmsteen and the greatness of him, and
he made it more youthful.
Yeah,
Richie Blackmore wasn't an old man, but Yngwie brought youth into it. I mean,
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
it was just, he was a young kid, and the way he was throwing his guitar around, I mean, it was a reckless abandon that was connected. They just connected. I don't know what he was doing on stage, just connected and resonated with everybody.
Yeah.
He had a wonderful band behind him too that backed him up 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
a lot of fun on the road too. We used to hang out with the band, and we'd have some beers after the show. Played dynamite games of ping pong with cups in the hotel rooms, and just having fun,
Yeah.
killing time.
So how long was this tour? It was a few months, wasn't it?
I think it was 33 shows, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a summer tour,
Yep.
and a lot of fun, just a lot of fun, and yeah, it was just magical to watch those two guys, Billy and Yngwie, just because they're so close in their, not necessarily their styles of playing, but in the energy, in what they
Oh yeah.
to the music. I've often said about Billy, the antics and the throwing his guitar around and doing all the things that he does. It's how he interprets music, and Yngwie did the same thing. You can't separate that from either of those players. They're just not the same if they're not doing all that stuff and moving with the music. It's
Right,
part
yeah.
of what they do, and to watch them in their youth do that was quite an amazing. I was really fortunate, and I think about people in the audience all the time because I was side stage watching all this happen, and on stage and side stage during Yngwie shows. But I always imagine what the people in the audience were thinking. This is just one of a kind. You aren't going to see this, I mean, ever. Those guys are phenomenal.
And again, thanks for not playing Buffalo so I could experience it. But
Sorry, man. I had no.
I know it wasn't. I'm sure you guys would have loved to play Buffalo on that tour.
That
Yeah, absolutely. Now, was that a co-headlining tour? Did you guys like switch like positions? Like, you would yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes you would headline and
Yeah.
you would go first. Yeah.
I want to say that Yngwie probably headlined more shows, but we headlined some as well. I don't know how that worked. I really didn't care.
Yeah.
Show up, play, and enjoy. So
how long was your set back then?
Yeah, we were doing either a 45-minute set or a 90-minute set, depending on the venue and who we were playing with. Shoot, we were, I don't remember half the bands we played with, Anthrax and all these bands back then who were big, Great White.
You played a show with Rats. I know you played in North Tonawanda. That was another last second thing. And that was with, I believe, Twisted Sister backing out again. Yeah, because it was supposed to be Twisted Sister and Rat, and it was National Hose Park in Tonawanda.
Yeah.
You remember that gig? It was outside.
I got a picture of it. I don't remember the gig, but I have a picture of it. And somebody told me it's the National Hose Park because there's a stack behind me in one of the pictures.
Yeah. Well, you guys were really good that day. So yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah. So so the Yngwie tour, you guys are on top of the world, and then Billy hits you with the news that he's joining the David Lee Roth band. Mm-hmm. What was that moment like? What was that conversation like?
Well, that wasn't really a moment. As I told you earlier, Billy and I used to room together on the road. And so we spent a lot of time together. We had a lot of conversations and talked about a lot of different things. He let me in onto what was happening early on.
Oh, did he?
Let the other guys in. I don't know. I didn't pursue it. He wanted to tell me in confidence. I respected that. But so I knew for quite some time that what was going down, and happy for him. Totally happy for him. Just, man, what a break. It's just, this is what he had been working for 20 years,
yeah,
whatever it was. And so I'm really happy for him that way. But it didn't let down my momentum or anyone's momentum at all. It was just, we played the shows just the same way and never gave it a thought, really. And TALAS was always intended to continue after that. I had a lot of time to think for all the time I had been on the road. And so I had a lot of time to think about what I was going to do, and pretty much decided I wasn't going to continue. I joined TALAS for TALAS and Billy, and I didn't see a future in another TALAS without Billy. It wasn't going to happen. So, and I wasn't thrilled about going back to bars. I was really enjoying the circuit we were playing on. It's different, bars, it's okay, but it's a whole different kind of vibe,
Yeah, for sure.
Concerts, people are there to listen and they're familiar with your music maybe, or you're turning on some new people, whatever the case may be, but it's a different vibe and I enjoyed that vibe. So, and again, money has never been a big thing for me. It's not something I strive for. So musically, I didn't need to work musically per se. I got lots of other ways to be creative and enjoy myself. So
wow, but the story doesn't really end there though, because once again, after Billy joined David Lee Roth band, you got another call from Billy.
months go by. I've started a new life. I sold my kit. Decided that, because a bizarre thing here is that when I was a kid, 17, 16, 17, and deciding, maybe I could do something with music. And I decided, well, looking at musicians dying off and stuff like that and the lifestyle, thinking to myself, and I actually thought, well, I'll give it to 30 if nothing happens. So the breakup of TALAS was the year I turned 30.
Wow.
So I kind of told me, I'm going to follow this. And so that's what I did. So months go by, TALAS broken up, and I'm starting a new life. I'm working in a woodworking shop, building furniture and cabinetry and enjoying that life. And get a phone call. It's Billy again. Hey, can you want to do an audition for David Lee Roth's band? So again, I hung up the phone and told my wife, what do I do? She goes, you got to do it. I had the best wife, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But she passed away, unfortunately, in 2016. But,
I'm sorry to hear that.
But anyway, she was a wonderful woman, and she said, I got to do it. So, and I just found out from Billy. I thought Billy wanted me to be in the band or audition for it. So I thought that he paid for the ticket and everything to fly out to LA and all that. No, David Lee Roth wanted me to audition. So that was pretty cool to learn that little tidbit. But flew out there and stayed with Billy for a couple of days and got a chance to audition with Steve Vai and Billy. It was pretty cool. Went into David Lee Roth's house, got there, drove through this huge metal steel gate, press a button and get this guy answering, who is this? And drove in and went into his basement. There was a road crew there, emptying out huge boxes of brand new drums, the biggest kit I ever played on. Wow. And we just assembled it right there. It was the first kit. I was the first drummer to audition, I believe. And it was the first of everything. So we set the kit up and we jammed a little bit on a bunch of TALAS songs and a bunch of other things, and spent the whole day there, took off, went back to Billy, spent the night, got on a plane the next day, and said, thank you very much. I kind of knew that it wasn't going to happen, and I kind of didn't feel good about it, Just didn't, I think I had already left.
Yeah, because you were away from the business for a while.
Yeah, I had already made my decision, and I was good with it.
Yeah, yeah. But then again, you ended up hooking up with Billy and put out this amazing record, 1985, and the TALAS 2.0 continues, and I'm sure there's going to be some great things in the future, and I can't wait. And I'm hoping our next time we talk, we're talking about a new TALAS record.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Or at least a show. I'm hoping we could do a tribute to Phil. There's a lot of singers interested in doing something like that. And, we can get the schedules connected. Maybe we can get something happening so we can do a tribute show to Phil. That would be really wonderful.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That's something we've talked about ever since he passed away. So
yeah. Well, I think the fans want it to happen. So,
cool.
We need that like closure. I think at least, I would like I said in the beginning, I would like to see Billy end his career playing like the last 10 years of his career in TALAS, just to bookend it. I would love to see that, but I know who knows? It's rock and roll. Anything could happen.
Right.
But anyways, Mark, I want to thank you for your time. I knew this was going to be a great interview. You broke the record for my longest interview ever. So
Oh, no.
congratulations.
Wow. It's
Yes,
quarter
no,
after
that's
7.
good.
Wow.
No, that's good
Awesome.
stuff. We talked about some great things here.
We
So,
did.
so thank you
And
very much.
You highlighted some things I had no idea too. Look into light years. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Look
Yeah,
into that.
I will. There aren't many times where, like, someone gets me on something like that, especially with, an artist like Billy Sheehan, who, like, I consider myself really knowledgeable on. And, did you know Billy played with Kim Mitchell?
Oh yeah.
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 I have this argument with people all the time where people don't believe me on that.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we were doing some Kim Mitchell songs when I moved in with him and that first initial stuff. We were doing everything, all kinds of material. But yeah, he had played with Kim Mitchell by then.
Yeah. So, but anyways, again, congratulations on the 1985 record. And
We're real proud of it.
yeah, it's great. And for all you people watching out there, definitely check it out if you haven't already. And if you're watching this and you've watched it for this long, I mean, I'm assuming you have checked out 1985 by now. I mean, that's such a great record. And of course, check out the Live Speed on Ice right over here. The original press. I was probably the first person to buy this record when it came out. I was so excited about this.
Yeah.
What a great record this was.
Thanks, man.
Oh,
Yeah, I got mine on my wall over here. It's up there. You can see.
yeah, I do see it. Yeah. Now that should be like a triple platinum. Like that should have definitely been triple platinum.
Way too kind.
Yeah,
Way
no.
too
No, you know it too. You know it too. You're just being modest about it. That was a great record. For that time period, that record should have been much more popular than it was. But
would have been nice for
yeah.
sure.
All right. Well, anyways, Mark, again, thank you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for your time, Tom. Appreciate talking with you. It's nice.
All right. See ya.
Take care.
Bye-bye.